Hey guys, this is Mr. Grice for Algebra 1, Unit 4.3 Notes. Today we're talking about solving compound inequalities involving OR. Our learning target today is to be able to solve compound inequalities involving OR. So, part 1, writing a compound inequality. Write a verbal sentence that describes the inequality. Then, graph the compound inequality. So, what we have to do is take a look at that right there. What does that say? Well, that says that x is less, oh my gosh, is less than 1, because that's what that inequality means. It is less than 1 or greater than 2. Okay, x is less than 1, that's that first part, or x is greater than 2. There we go. Those are the two parts. That's all we have to do for writing a sentence. Now, the next part says to graph it. So, if x is less than, oh, I'm sorry, that should have been a -1. Why didn't any of you guys yell at me? Come on. So, at -1, it's less than, and we want to shade everything to the left. But the next part says that x could also be greater than 2. So at 2, it's open, and now we're shading everything to the right, okay? So whenever you see a graph like this, just know that this little break right here, that's our OR statement, okay? So x is less than -1, or x can be greater than 2, okay? Now, this next part says to write a compound inequality that represents the graph and the verbal sentence. So this first part is saying, let's use the same colors as we did on that last one, x is less than -2. Okay, so there we go. Let's write that. X is less than -2. Or our other part, greater than or equal to 3. That's what that part is right there. So x can be greater than or equal to 3. So what we're going to be working on today is being able to write those, but then also solve some of these compound inequalities. Part 2, here comes the solving. Whenever you see the word OR, just think of these as two separate problems, okay? So let's solve the one on the left first. To get the w by itself, we would want to divide by -3, okay? So we got w, and then we also have 9 divided by -3 is -3. We just have to remember that we need to flip the inequality because we divided by a negative. Okay. Now, on the right side, we're going to subtract both of those by -2, and we have w is less than -6. Now, before we go all happy and write this down, be like, hey, look, I got my two answers. Well, our two answers need to be in order, okay? We always want to write the one with the lowest number first, and -6 is less than -3, okay? So here is our answer right here. W is less than -6, or W is greater than or equal to -3. Okay, so let's write it out. I know I need, let's see, we need -6, that's -5, -4, there's -3, okay? I want the tick marks to be able to see those numbers. Like there's 0, you don't have to do a bunch, but we want a couple. So at -6, we're open, and it's less than that, so we shade to the left. And at -3, it's closed, and we shade to the right. And remember, anytime we have that break right there means or. Okay? Okay. Solving for y, my first part, we have to subtract 1 to both sides, and we get 3y is less than 4 minus 1 is 3. Divide both sides by 3, and we get y is less than 1. Okay? Now on the right side, we have to add 4 to both sides. Remember that negative does not go away. Negative 1/2 y is less than negative 3. To get rid of a fraction, we multiply by the reciprocal. Negative 2 over 1 is the same thing as negative 2. Negative 3 times negative 2 is positive 6. And we multiplied by a negative, so we have to flip the sign. Okay? And there's my OR statement. They are already written in order from least to greatest. So now all we have to do is graph. There's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. At 1, we're open, and we shade to the left. And at 6, we're open, and we shade to the right. It's not too hard, is it? Let's look at number 5. Okay, we need to divide by 11. Negative 22 divided by 11 is negative 2. And just remember that we need to rewrite this because we want the n first and then the negative 2. And it's pointing at the end, so I want to make sure that my inequality is pointing at the end. Now on the right side, I need to subtract 4 to both sides, and we're left with n is greater than 0. So there we go. Oh, that doesn't even look like an OR. There we go. So we wrote our inequality. So there's 1, negative 1, 0, 1, negative 2, negative 3. Just put a couple numbers down. Now at negative 2, it's open, and we shade to the left. At 0, we're open, and we shade to the right. All right, number 6. Now, how do we solve for x in this first part? Well, we have to multiply by the reciprocal. Okay, it still stays negative, so I multiply by negative 3 over 2. I'm multiplying by a negative, so I have to make sure to flip that sign. There's my x. Negative times negative is positive. 4 times 3 is 12, and 12 divided by 2 is 6. Now on the right side, we have a little bit more work to do. Subtract 7 to both sides, and we get negative 2x greater than or equal to negative 2. I have to divide by a negative 2, and I get x. Negative divided by negative is positive. And what did I just divide by? A negative, which means I got to flip my sign. Okay? So there are 2 answers, but we got to make sure that they're in order. So I want my lower number, x is less than or equal to 1, or x is greater than 6. And now we can draw our picture. Okay? Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there's 6. Okay, at the 1 we're closed, and we shade to the left, and at 6 we're open, and we shade to the right. All right, number 7. Let's go ahead and I want to see if you guys can solve it. See if you can solve it and graph it all on your own. I think you can do it. Okay, go ahead and pause the video, and good luck. Okay, so that's what you should have gotten. The only thing you had to be careful for is right here, -4 is less than x. You had to rewrite that so the x is first, and that's x is greater than -4. Okay, and now let's look at what the question is asking us. It's asking us, is x equals 5 a solution to the inequality above? Well, is it? Yes or no? Well, why? I actually have no idea what you said. So, is x equal, Mr. Grice, -5 is on the graph. It is. It's on the graph. It's right there. But it's open, which means x can be less than -5, not is -5. So can it be part of the answer? No, it cannot. Okay, and that's the next part. We want you to go that next step. All right, number 8. Okay, we have to divide by a -2. And if we divide by negative, we have to flip the sign. -6 divided by -2 is a +3. Now on the right side, to get rid of division, which is going on right there, we have to multiply. Okay? And we multiply 0 times -4 is 0, but we multiplied by negative, so we have to flip the sign. Oh, I didn't flip the sign there. There we go. Now we flip the sign. Okay? And now, are our two inequalities in order? Well, no, we gotta make sure the lower one goes first. So we're gonna switch those two around. Y is less than 0, or y is greater than or equal to 3. And now let's draw our picture. 0, there's 1, there's 2, there's 3, there's 4, there's -1. Okay? So, at 0, it's open, and we shade to the left. And at 3, it's closed, and we shade to the right. So our question is y equals -2, solution to the inequality. Well, if we think about it, there's -1, there's -2. Is it in the colored portion? It sure is, so that is part of it. All right, let's go ahead and flip it over. So once again, we want to solve for the variables. So the first thing we're going to do is subtract 3 to both sides. And we get -10 is greater than or equal to -2m. I want the variable by itself, so I'm going to divide by -2. And we get 5 and m. However, we just divided by a negative, so I have to flip the sign. And the next thing we would have to do is to rewrite this, because we always want the variable first. I'm pointing at the 5, so I want to make sure it's pointing at the 5. Okay, the right side, we have to add 5 to both sides. We get 3m is less than -15. Divide both sides by 3. And we get m is less than -5. And now when we're looking at our two inequalities right there, I want to put them in order. Okay, so -5 comes first and then the 5. So m is less than negative 5, or m is greater than or equal to 5. Okay, so you're in charge of the next two parts. Go ahead and draw the graph and then answer the question. Go ahead and pause the video, and good luck. Okay, there we go. So my graph, negative 5, less than that, it's open, and then greater than or equal to, so it's closed and to the right. Now, is m equals negative 1 a solution? Well, there's one right there. You tell me, is that a solution? No. Okay. The right side we have to distribute first, and we get 2n plus 4. So let's subtract the 4 to both sides, and we get negative 12 is greater than 2n. And I'm going to divide by 2. Now, am I dividing by positive or negative? I'm dividing by positive. So that stays the same. The only thing that's different is we have to rewrite it. So we get n and negative 6. It's pointing, the inequality is pointing at the end. So I'm going to make sure it stays pointing at the n. Okay. Now the first thing I actually have to get rid of on the right side is that 3, and I have to do the inverse operation. Now don't become a math magician, that n is negative. Okay? Now to get the n by itself, I have to divide by a negative 1. I'm dividing by a negative, so I know I have to flip that sign. And 3 divided by negative 1 is negative 3. And now looking at our two inequalities, negative 6, negative 3, those are actually in order, okay? So we have n is less than negative 6, or n is greater than or equal to negative 3. Okay, so we got negative 6, there's negative 5, negative 4, there's negative 3. I'm going to just do a couple more points. All right, so at negative 6, we are open and we shade to the left. And negative 3, we're closed and we shade to the right. Now, our question is negative 3 part of the solution right there. What do you think? Yes, it is. Okay, because it's colored in, it's closed, it's greater than or equal to negative 3. So that means yes, it's part of the solution. Okay. Now we've got a couple harder ones right now. You always want to distribute first, okay? So we get 4 minus 4k plus k is less than or equal to negative 8. We want to combine our like terms. So we get 4 minus 3k is less than or equal to negative 8. And solve. So we're going to subtract 4 to both sides. We get negative 3k is less than or equal to negative 12. And it's not all by itself yet, so we have to divide by a negative 3. I get k, I get 4. And we have to flip because we divided by a negative. Okay? Now we have variables on both sides. We talked about this in 4.2. I want to move the smaller variable. So between that, the 2 is smaller. So I'm going to subtract the 2k. And we get 3k minus 1 is less than or equal to 8. and then we just solve. So we're going to add 1 to both sides. We get 3k is less than or equal to 9. Divide by 3, and we get k is less than 3. You tell me, are those two guys in order? I'll let you decide as you do the last two parts. So graph it and then tell me if it's a solution. Good luck. Okay, so those two inequalities were not in order, so I moved the k less than 3 over there and the greater than or equal to 4 on that side, so we just flipped them. There's our graph. And is k equals 0 part of the solution? Yes, it is. Okay. Sorry guys, these keep getting bigger and bigger. Let's practice all that solving we did last chapter. Okay, 2 times w is 2w, 2 times 4 is 8, less than negative 3w plus 8. Let's get your variable to one side, so we're going to move the smaller one, which is the negative one. And we're left with 5w plus 8 is less than 8. Okay, I'm actually going to stop that problem right there, and we're going to go over to the right one, because I'm going to make you do a little bit more work on your own this time. Okay, I want to distribute that negative 2. So we have 1 minus 2w minus 2 is greater than negative 6w plus 7. We can combine like terms on the right side, and we get negative 2w minus 3 is greater than negative 6w plus 7. Okay. I'm sorry, 1 minus 2, guys. I gotta wake up. 1 minus 2 is negative 1. That's my fault. Okay, so we have to move the smaller variable, so I'm going to add 6w to both sides. And now we have 4w minus 1 is greater than, oh, I can't even write a 7. 7. Now, I kind of stopped both of those at the same point because you guys are going to solve it from here. I want you to solve it, graph it, and answer the question. Okay? You guys ready? I think you can do it. Pause the video and good luck. Okay, so for 5w, plus 8 is less than 8. Subtract 8 to both sides, you get 5w is less than 0. Divide by 5, w is less than 0. Or 4w minus 1 is greater than 7, add 1, divide by 4, and you get w is greater than 2. And there's our graph. And then the last part was negative 3 part of the solution set. Yes, it was. Okay. Now, that's going to be it for Algebra 1 Unit 4.3 notes. If you have any questions, please come find Ms. Carranza or myself. Otherwise, thanks for watching.